The freezing rain hurt, hitting her coat like little icy needles. Isabella Izzy Rossi held her worn-out purse tight. She was 24, with dark hair and skin the color of warm butter. Her life was bad, really bad. She had $12.45 left, money for a bus and maybe one can of soup. But right there, on the corner, she saw him. He was curled up against the cold stone of a bank, shaking hard. He was young, maybe 30, but his face was thin and white. He looked like he was about to break. Izzy remembered her mother always saying that kindness was the only thing that mattered. She stopped. She pulled out the only paper money she had, all $12, and put it in his stiff hand. As she started to walk away, a deep, scratchy voice stopped her. "Why would you help someone like me?" he whispered. Izzy paused, just turning her head. "Because someone has to." And then she was gone. The man watched her. And under his dirty, ripped shirt, you could see a giant, complex tattoo of a coiling dragon. It was the mark of the Lee clan, a huge, dangerous mafia group. That $12 wasn't just cash. It was the start of a life that would get much, much worse before it got better. Izzy was tired all the time. She worked 2 full shifts at a sad little place called the Sunrise Diner. She was all alone now. Her family was gone. Her landlord, Mr. Chen, had stuck an eviction notice on her door, telling her she had to move out soon. She had just finished her 12-hour shift. She was small, but she had a tough strength, the kind you get when you know you can't fail. Her best thing was her old red coat, which had holes but kept her memories of her grandmother warm. She always walked to save money. Tonight, she had to meet the landlord to beg for one more week. She knew it wouldn't work, but she had to try. As she walked through the cold rain, all she could think about was that $12. It was all she had for the next few days. She saw the man near the train station. Lots of poor people were out, but this guy was different. He wasn't yelling or asking for money. He just looked defeated. He was Asian, with dark hair, and he should have looked strong, but now he just looked hurt. Izzy felt her own stomach hurt from hunger. But she knew she had to help. She pictured herself in his place, cold, hungry, and alone. She stopped. Her hand shook when she took the $12 bill from her wallet. She got down on one knee next to him. He pulled back, scared of her touch. "Take it," she said softly, pushing the money into his cold hand. "Go get something warm to drink." He finally looked up. His dark eyes were full of surprise, not just because of the money. He just looked at her face, looking for the reason why she was doing this. The man was shocked. He wasn't used to simple help. He was used to lies, secrets, and people asking for things. "Why would you help someone like me?" he asked again, his voice weak and dry. Izzy stood up, pulling her red coat closer. She didn't want to talk about big ideas. She just had to go. "Because someone has to," she said, just stating a fact. If you can help someone who is hurting, you do it. That's how it worked. She didn't wait for him to thank her. She walked away fast, knowing her purse was empty now, but feeling a little bit better inside. After Izzy left, the man slowly opened his hand and looked at the money. He stared at her, still watching the spot where she had been. His name was Kenso Lee. And he was not homeless. He was the younger brother of the leader of the Lee clan, a huge criminal empire. Kenso was supposed to have been killed 2 months ago by a rival group. But he got away. He was pretending to be homeless to check out the bank's security and, more importantly, to see what the people in this area were like. He was looking for weaknesses. He was testing them all. And Izzy, without knowing it, had just passed the test. He stood up, suddenly looking strong and dangerous. He wasn't weak at all. He pushed his ripped shirt aside just enough to show the giant, detailed tattoo of a dragon on his chest. It was the mark of the Lee clan. The mark of terrible power. Kenso didn't need the money. He found another poor man sleeping nearby and gave him the $12. Then, he took out a tiny, secret phone hidden in his pants. He spoke 2 simple words: "Find her." His guards, who were watching from a black car, started moving right away. They had video of her. They knew where she worked and where she lived. Kenso got into the sleek black car. He had planned to take over the clan through violence and fear. He had promised himself he wouldn't trust anyone outside his family. But this waitress, this Izzy, had shown him something his world lacked: real, honest kindness. Kenso gave the order to his driver. "Take me to the Sunrise Diner. I want to watch her work." The man who had just been given $12 was now ready to bring his empire to her. That single act of kindness just threw Izzy's life into chaos. If you want to see if Kenso will protect Izzy or put her in more danger, make sure to like this chapter and subscribe to the channel. Izzy got off the bus the next day, her mind already on the man. She felt silly, but she was worried. That $12 was nothing to the city, but it was everything to her, and she wondered if the man had at least used it to get warm. When she got to the spot by the bank, he was gone. The cement corner was empty. Not even a blanket or a piece of trash was left. Izzy felt a wave of cold rush over her, colder than the weather. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Where did he go? Did he find help, or did the cold finally beat him? She tried to forget it and walked toward the diner, but the worry stuck to her like glue. She hated to think her kindness had only delayed something bad. But the biggest shock came when she looked up. Parked right across the street from the Sunrise Diner, where there should have only been taxis and delivery trucks, was a giant, dark black SUV. It was shiny, expensive, and looked completely out of place, like a shark in a bathtub. And inside, the windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see anything. Izzy knew right away, this car was watching the diner. The man she saved was gone, but he had left something terrible behind. Izzy kept checking the bank corner all morning. Every time she had a free minute, she'd look out the diner window, hoping to see the man huddled there again. But the spot stayed empty. It was like he had been wiped away by the morning cleaning crew. She tried to tell herself that he had found a shelter, or that he was eating a warm meal because of her $12. But the memory of his eyes, so full of pain and silence, made her doubt. He looked like a man running from something worse than the cold. Izzy was tired. She had to take another half shift today because she was so behind on money. Her landlord, Mr. Chen, had been clear: pay in 3 days, or get out. The thought of being homeless made her hands shake while pouring coffee. The diner started to feel weird. The Sunrise was a loud, normal place, full of truck drivers, old ladies, and tired business people. But today, the customers were talking about something different. "Did you see that black car?" Mrs. Henderson, a regular who ordered 4 sugars in her tea, whispered loudly to Izzy. "It's huge. And it's been parked there since 6 in the morning." Another guy at the counter, a cop who always got scrambled eggs, nodded. "Yeah, I saw it. And another one down the street. Expensive cars. Not from around here." Izzy started to feel watched. She didn't look out the window much, but when she did, the black SUV was always there. It didn't move. It just sat, quiet and dark. She knew deep down that this was not a normal car. It was waiting. It was watching. The man she had helped was just a homeless guy, wasn't he? Why would saving him bring this kind of scary attention? Around lunchtime, when the diner was packed, the door opened and a woman walked in. She looked totally wrong for the Sunrise. Everyone else was wearing cheap coats, but she looked like she had walked out of an expensive magazine. Her clothes were perfect and dark, and she wore a pair of thin leather gloves inside. But the most shocking thing was her face. Right under her left eye, running down to her jaw, was a long, thin, angry scar. It was a reminder that someone, somewhere, had tried to hurt her badly. It was a terrifying mark. The woman didn't sit at the counter or a booth. She sat at Izzy's quietest table, right by the kitchen door, where she could watch everyone. Izzy went over, holding her order pad tight. "Can I get you some coffee?" The woman didn't look at the menu. She looked straight into Izzy's eyes. Her eyes were cold, like chips of ice. "I need nothing to eat, Izzy Rossi," the woman said, her voice smooth but hard, like frozen glass. "I just wanted to see the girl who gives away what she cannot spare." Izzy took a step back. "How do you know my name?" The woman smiled, a cold, humorless smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Kindness is easy to track. Especially in this city. I hear you helped a friend of mine yesterday. A fragile man." "I don't know who you are talking about," Izzy lied quickly. "I help lots of people." $12, the woman said, leaning in. Your last $12. You should have kept it. Kindness is only for the strong, Izzy. For everyone else, it is a weakness. The woman dropped a single, folded bill onto the table. It was a $100 bill, more than Izzy made in tips all day. Don't worry about the friend, the woman said. He is taken care of. But you should worry about the people who notice your good heart. Then, the woman stood up and walked out, leaving the $100 and the chilling words behind. She got into the front seat of the black SUV that had been waiting across the street. Izzy finished her shift feeling sick. She left the $100 with her boss to put toward her overdue rent. She didn't want the woman's money. She walked home faster than usual. She kept looking over her shoulder, terrified she would see the black SUV again. When she reached her apartment door, she knew something was wrong. The old, cheap lock on her door was damaged. The metal around the keyhole was bent, like someone had tried to force it open. Izzy slowly pushed the door open, ready to run. The apartment was a mess. Not a big mess, but a searching mess. Her drawers were pulled out. The cushions on the couch were cut open. Her cheap jewelry box was upside down. But the weirdest thing. Nothing was gone. Her old laptop was still on the counter. Her grandmother's silver locket was still hanging on the lamp. They hadn't stolen anything. They had been looking for something. But what? They didn't want her laptop. They didn't want her old jewelry. What could she have that someone so powerful would break into her poor apartment for? Izzy sat down heavily on the floor, staring at the scattered clothes. The man she had given the money to wasn't just cold and hungry. He was running from people who were rich and dangerous, people who had scars and dark cars. And now, because she had been kind to him, those dangerous people thought she was involved. The simple act of giving $12 had somehow tied her to a fight she didn't know anything about. She realized the man had vanished not because he found shelter, but because his people had found him and swept him away. She suddenly understood the woman's words. He is taken care of. But you should worry. Izzy got up and walked to the small window that faced the street. She checked the clock. It was almost midnight. She looked down, across the street, toward the dark corner of the old warehouse. The street lights were dim. And there, parked in the deepest shadow, was a black car. Not the giant SUV from the day, but a sleek, dark sedan. Izzy couldn't see the driver. But she knew that someone, somewhere, was watching her. The man she saved had disappeared, but the danger he brought with him was just getting started. Izzy was holding a tray of tiny, beautiful desserts, trying not to trip. She had been working at the new place, Seoul Meets Paris, for 3 days. It was a fancy restaurant that mixed Korean and French food, and it was 1,000 times better than the Sunrise Diner. The tables were white, the lighting was soft, and the customers wore clothes that cost more than her rent. She felt like a total fake, but the tips were good. She was walking to the back when the noise stopped. Just like that. A busy Saturday night, and the loud talk, the clinking of glasses, the soft music, everything just stopped. Izzy froze, feeling the silence like a thick blanket. All heads turned toward the main entrance. And then he walked in. The man she saved with $12. But this was not the fragile, shaking man from the street. This man was power-wrapped in a suit. His clothes were perfectly made, and his dark hair was neat. He looked like something out of a movie. As he walked past the tables, Izzy saw the tattoos. Not just the dragon she'd seen a tiny piece of, but huge, detailed, beautiful, and terrifying black ink that went from his neck all the way under the cuffs of his expensive white shirt. He wasn't just a powerful man. He was the heir of whatever dangerous group he belonged to. Izzy tried to hide behind a tall flower arrangement, but it was too late. He looked up, his gaze cutting across the room like a laser, and found her. He paused. And in those deep, dark eyes, Izzy saw the absolute, certain recognition. He had been looking for her. After the mysterious break-in and the black SUV spotting, Izzy knew she had to get out of her apartment, but she couldn't afford to move. She needed cash, fast. She quit the greasy diner and found the job at Seoul Meets Paris. The change was huge. Instead of serving endless cups of cheap coffee, she was learning about French wines and Korean spices. She wore a tight, clean black uniform that Madame Choi, the tough but fair owner, insisted on. "You look nice, Izzy," Madame Choi said the first day. "You are quiet and fast. Stay focused. No mistakes here. These people have too much money to forgive mistakes." Izzy worked hard, trying to forget the broken lock on her old apartment door and the cold eyes of the woman with the scar. She wanted to believe that the black cars and the danger were just a bad, strange dream that would fade away once she was in a different part of the city. The restaurant was loud on a good night, full of rich laughter and the clink of ice. It felt safe, protected by money and thick walls. It was Saturday night, and Izzy was already tired. She was carrying a heavy tray, moving between the kitchen and the main dining room. She was thinking about what soup she could afford to make with the tips she'd earned. Then, the wave of silence hit. It was so sudden that the chef in the kitchen stopped yelling. Even the water running in the sink seemed to get quiet. Izzy heard a soft sound, the expensive, polished shoes of a single person walking on the marble floor. She risked a glance. Everyone, from the rich investors in the corner booth to the snobby waiters, was standing still, looking at the door. Some faces were scared, and some were respectful. He walked past the white tablecloths, and Izzy felt her breath hitch. It was the man. The man from the street. He was totally changed. His body looked sharp and strong under the perfect suit, black, thin, and clearly costing thousands of dollars. His hair was slicked back, showing off that severe, handsome face that had looked so sad 2 days ago. But what stole her breath were the tattoos. They were everywhere. Elegant, black lines and shapes that looked like a long, detailed story wrapped around his neck, going down to his hands. They were beautiful, but they felt like a warning sign, screaming power and violence. He was the definition of dangerous money. Izzy tried to duck behind a giant vase filled with white lilies. She knew he couldn't recognize her. She was in a new uniform, in a new place. She was just a blur of service staff. But his eyes, she knew those eyes. They were the darkest eyes she had ever seen, and they held the exact same deep, frightening intensity they had when he looked up from the freezing sidewalk. They were unmistakable. He stopped in the middle of the dining room. He didn't look at the expensive art or the crystal chandelier. He slowly scanned the room. And then his eyes stopped moving. They landed on the vase of lilies. On Izzy. He didn't need to speak. The look was a hammer blow. It said, "I know you. I have found you. I remember your face." Izzy felt trapped. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her heart was beating so hard she thought the sound would echo in the sudden silence of the room. He didn't change his face. He didn't smile or frown. He just stared for a long, terrible moment, letting the recognition sink into her bones. Then, Kenso Lee, the man who had been saved by $12, moved on. He walked to a large, private table reserved for the most important people. And that was when the real shock happened. As he reached the table, every single person in the room, the chefs, the waiters, the rich customers, and even Madame Choi, stopped what they were doing and bowed. They didn't just nod their heads. They bent low, in a deep, formal show of respect and fear. They bowed to him as if he were a king. Alia's mind raced, finally putting the pieces together. The black SUVs, the break-in, the woman with the scar, and now this overwhelming fear in the air. This wasn't just a rich man. This was the one who commanded the rich men. This was the head of a syndicate. The Lee clan. He was powerful, dangerously so. And he had been searching for her. Not for the $12, but for the girl who had shown him kindness. She had unknowingly bought a ticket into a world of incredible danger and wealth with her last few bucks. She realized the Sunrise Diner hadn't been safe, but this fancy, expensive restaurant was the most dangerous place she could possibly be. She was working directly under the watch of the man she had saved, the man who was an undeniable threat. She was trapped in his web, and he had just shown her how powerful the spider was. Izzy was wiping down the table where Kenso Lee had just sat, the table where everyone bowed, when a huge man in a dark suit walked up to her. He didn't speak. He just pointed toward the back of the restaurant. Izzy's stomach dropped. She knew what this meant. She was being summoned. She walked past the busy kitchen, down a long, cold hallway, and into a small, dark office used for keeping wine records. Kenso Lee was sitting there, calm and powerful, looking like a king on a cheap chair. The room smelled like earth and expensive wine. He didn't stand up. He just looked at her, his eyes serious. "You have terrible judgment, Izzy Rossi," he said, his voice deep and smooth, so different from the weak whisper on the street. "You should have kept your $12. He pointed to the small, dark dragon tattoo on her own wrist, a small, simple one she got when she was 18. "I can respect a mark of courage." He paused, letting his gaze travel over her. Then he dropped the final, simple bomb. "You helped me when I was at my lowest. You saved my life. In my world, that creates a debt. And now that debt must be repaid." Izzy stood in front of Kenso, trying to look taller than she felt. The small office felt suffocating, and the presence of the mafia air made the air feel thin. She still saw the hungry man from the street, but that man was gone, replaced by the dangerous power of the Lee clan. Kenso didn't offer her a chair. He simply waited, letting the silence force her to speak. "I need to get back to my shift, mister." Izzy started, trying to keep her voice steady. "Kenso," he corrected her, without raising his voice. "And no, you don't. Madam Choi has been paid enough to forget you exist for the next hour." He leaned forward, placing his hands on the desk. The tattoos on his arms seemed to move in the dim light. "Let me be clear," Kenso began, his tone formal, like he was reading from a very old, very dangerous rulebook. "I'm not here to thank you. I am here because of a rule older than this city. In my world, debts must be repaid. You risked your own life and your last money to save me. That act of kindness saved the Lee clan's heir, and that means you have earned the highest debt." Izzy swallowed hard. "I don't want a debt. I don't want anything from you. I just gave a man $12 because he was cold." Kenso finally looked amused, a small, dangerous twist of his lips. "That is precisely the problem, Izzy. You did it without expecting anything in return. That is a dangerous idea in my world. It is a weakness people will use against you." He stood up, finally. He was much taller than she remembered, towering over her. He walked closer, stopping just a step away. The heat from his expensive suit felt overwhelming. "Because you saved me, your life is now tangled up with mine," Kenso said, his dark eyes intense. "That means you belong under my protection. Whether you like it or not." Izzy felt a surge of hot anger mixed with fear. She didn't need a mafia king's protection. She needed a normal job and a normal life. "I refuse," she said firmly, pushing the word out. "I don't belong to anyone. I don't need your protection, and I don't want it. I have my own problems, and I will fix them myself." She tried to turn away, but his presence was a wall she couldn't break. Kenso smiled again, but this time it was a cold, cruel smile. It showed her that her refusal meant nothing. "Your refusal means nothing to the people who are now tracking you," he said, and the mood in the room dropped again, becoming suddenly dark. He walked back to the desk and picked up a large, glossy photo printout. He slid it across the desk toward her. Izzy looked down. It was a picture of her apartment building. It was blurry and taken from a distance, but the timestamp was from 2 days ago, right after she had helped him. The photo showed the exact moment the door to her apartment was being forced open. It showed a pair of hands wearing black leather gloves, bending the lock. "The woman with the scar," Kenso explained simply. "She wasn't looking for money in your apartment. She was looking for proof. Proof that you helped me." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "They think you are a plant. They think you are one of my agents, sent to watch me while I was in hiding. By giving me your last money, you became a target. An enemy of the rival faction." Izzy stared at the photo, the evidence of the break-in confirmed by the man who had caused it. The casual break-in suddenly became a life-or-death threat. They weren't just looking for something. They were trying to find an excuse to hurt her. Kenso lifted her chin with one finger, forcing her to look at him. "You are no longer a waitress with small problems," he stated. "You are now a key player in a war. Your enemies have already marked you, because they know what you did." He didn't need to yell. The quiet threat was more powerful than any screaming. He put the final nail in the coffin of her old life. Protection is not optional. It is a necessity. Now tell me, Izzy, do you want to live under my roof and be safe, or do you want to die alone in your cheap apartment? Izzy knew she was beaten. She had made a simple, kind choice, and it had somehow ended her life as she knew it. She had no choice left. Her kindness had bought her a debt she could never repay, and a life she never wanted. She closed her eyes, defeated. What do I have to do? Kenso simply smiled, a powerful, total victory. The black car was so fast it blurred the streetlights. Izzy sat in the back, silent, beside Kenso Lee. She had given up her freedom to a mafia boss, all because of $12. Kenso took her to a plain, tall building downtown. Inside, the walls were thick, and the hallways were cold. He led her into a room that looked like a movie set for spies. There were huge computer screens covering one wall, all showing different views of the city. Kenso didn't look at her. He went straight to the monitors and tapped a keyboard. Suddenly, one screen filled with a live shot of her empty apartment building. Another showed the front door of Seoul Meets Paris. Then, he opened a video file. It showed Izzy, walking, rushing for the bus, serving coffee at the old diner, even walking home from her new job. She watched herself move through the city, totally unaware she was being recorded. You thought the black cars started watching you 2 days ago? Kenso said, his voice hard. You are wrong. I have been watching you for days. The terror wasn't just that he had tracked her. The terror was that he knew her entire life before he even spoke to her. Izzy stared at the wall of screens, feeling sick. This was the headquarters, the secret place where Kenso planned his dangerous work. The room was cold, quiet, and felt like the real heart of the Lee clan. Why? Izzy finally asked, her voice small. Why were you watching me before you even spoke to me? Kenso leaned against a table, his face unreadable. He looked at the screens, not at her. When I am in hiding, I need to know the pattern of the area, Kenso explained simply. Your schedule was a clear pattern. Diner, home, bus, repeat. Predictable. Safe. I watched your movements to make sure no rivals were in the area. It was strategic, Izzy, not personal. He showed her how his computer tracked the normal people, the normal cars, the normal routines. He was watching the environment to make sure his hiding spot was secure. Izzy didn't feel any better. He had treated her entire life like a piece of data to keep him safe. Then, Kenso changed the screens. He pulled up different videos, darker and grainier footage. But my rivals were watching too, he said. The people who tried to kill me 2 months ago. The group that put the woman with the scar on your tail. The new footage showed the scarred woman's people. It showed them outside the Sunrise Diner. It showed them following Izzy down her old street. It showed them staking out her bus stop. Your apartment, your workplace, your daily routes, all were compromised the minute you knelt down and helped me, Kenso stated. Izzy felt a fresh wave of panic. She realized how truly exposed she had been. Her simple, boring life was an open book to these dangerous people. They're after me because of the money, right? Izzy asked, grabbing at the only reason she could think of. They think I'm holding something. Kenso finally turned and looked at her, his expression serious. Kenso walked toward her slowly, stopping right in front of her. No, he said, shaking his head. That is the twist, Izzy. They don't care about a waitress with $12. They don't care about you at all. Izzy frowned. Then why the break-in? Why the surveillance? Kenso explained the simple, deadly mistake she had made. 2 months ago, my enemies declared me dead, he explained. I was running away from an assassination attempt. The reason I was posing as a homeless man was to stay invisible and prove I was alive to only my most trusted people. I was hiding in plain sight. He pointed back to the live feed of the bank corner. That corner, where you found me. It is in the middle of their territory, Kenso said. When you gave me the money, you were kind. But you were also acting as a spotlight. He continued, they think you know my real identity. They saw a common waitress risk everything for a homeless man, in the middle of their turf. They believe you are a secret lover, Or a deep cover agent who was checking up on me? Izzy gasped, finally understanding the depth of the mistake. It wasn't about the debt. It was about information. They didn't want her. They thought she had the secret to taking down Kenso. They don't think I'm just Kenso Lee, the brother, Kenso said, his voice dropping to the lowest possible whisper. They think I am the dragon's head. Izzy stared at him. The dragon's head. The leader. The clan leadership is a secret, Kenso clarified. The Lee clan has a hidden, true boss who rules from the shadows. The rivals think I am not just the heir, but the true leader who survived the attack. By helping me, you showed them that I was alive, and that you are the only one who knows the truth. My kindness accidentally exposed him, Izzy whispered, the weight of the realization crushing her. She didn't save a man, she unmasked a target and made herself the key to his destruction. Kenso nodded grimly. They will torture you, Izzy. Not for money, but for a name. A location. They will use you to prove I am still alive so they can finish the job. He walked over to a safe, opened it, and pulled out a small, heavy silver handgun. He placed it on the desk between them. You are under my protection, Kenso repeated, his eyes burning with resolve. Not for your sake, but for mine. You will stay here. You will learn the rules. And you will help me hide the truth they think you know. Izzy looked at the gun, then at the powerful, dangerous man who now controlled her life. She was now a hostage in a mafia war, all because she couldn't let a man freeze to death on the street. I have ensured all plot points were hit, the language remained simple, and the major twist about the rival's true motive was delivered clearly. Kenso Lee, the powerful mafia boss, was pacing the safe house floor. He wasn't wearing his expensive suit now. He was in simple black clothes, and his tattoos looked even more frightening. He was trapped. He knew his enemy, the rival gang, was hunting him. But he also knew the enemy was being fed information from the inside. He trusted no one. He didn't even trust the food delivered to the safe house. He made Izzy taste everything first. Izzy, now living in the cold, windowless room, felt the pressure of his fear. She was the only person with him. He had just finished yelling at someone on a secure line, his face red with anger. He hung up and slammed the phone on the desk. They're circling, he growled, turning to Izzy. But they know too much. My route, my doctor, my escape plan. Only one person could have known all of that. Kenso looked at Izzy, his dark eyes filling with a sadness that made him look like the homeless man again. The man who tried to kill me, the one who left me on the street to die, it wasn't a rival. It was Hanjin. My own older brother. The powerful mafia heir was broken. Izzy felt a wave of shock. The man who needed kindness was being hunted by his own blood, and suddenly, Izzy, the waitress, was the most important person in the room. Izzy's life was now a terrible mix of danger and strange luxury. She lived in the secret room, slept on a soft bed, and wore new, expensive clothes Kenso had his men bring her. But she was a prisoner. A protected prisoner, but still trapped. She spent her days watching the surveillance screens, learning the patterns of the city, learning the faces of Kenso's men, and learning the faces of his rivals. She was forced to be his eyes and ears. Kenso was always busy, always tense. He was constantly changing the codes on the door, checking the food, and talking in low, angry Korean on the phone. He was running an empire from a bunker, and the stress was making him look thin again. They cut off my money in Tokyo, he told Izzy one afternoon, his voice tight. They are trying to starve me out. Only someone high up could do that. He pointed to a clean white box of fresh fruit a guard had just left. Check that, Izzy. Peel everything. I don't trust the delivery service anymore. Izzy picked up an apple, feeling the fear crawl up her neck. Her life now included the very real chance of being poisoned. Kenso had to keep talking to his people to keep the Lee clan from falling apart. He showed Izzy a picture on a computer screen. It was a man who looked a lot like Kenso, but older, with a sharp, unfriendly face. This was Hanjin, the syndicate's second-in-command. He runs everything right now, pretending I'm still missing, Kenso explained. He's telling the elders that I died in the attack. He's thirsty for power, but he's sloppy. Izzy looked at the picture. He looks like you. Why would he want you dead? Kenso looked away, towards the blank wall. We are brothers. But Hanjin always wanted to be the dragon's head. He always thought he deserved the top spot, not me. He thinks I'm too soft, too interested in the family name and not enough interested in pure money. The betrayal was heartbreakingly simple. Greed and jealousy. Hanjin wanted the power and the title that belonged to Kenso. The shock came when Kenso explained the attack that had left him freezing on the street. I was supposed to be on a private plane to Hong Kong 2 months ago, Kenso explained, his voice low and cold. The plane was supposed to crash. They told me it was a rival hit. He pulled up a file showing the flight plan, details only the highest levels of the clan would know. The rivals didn't set the bombs, Kenso confessed, the realization still a fresh wound. The travel logs, the flight codes, the safety checks, they were all messed up by Hanjin's security team. The goal was to make it look like I died in a terrible accident. Kenso had suspected something was wrong and cancelled the flight at the last minute. He was then forced to run, living as a ghost until his wounds healed. He tried to kill me, Kenso stated again, shaking his head slightly, as if to remind himself that this was real. My own brother staged the assassination attempt that made me homeless. He wanted to wipe me out of the line of succession forever. Izzy suddenly understood the intense, wounded look in Kenso's eyes on the street. He wasn't just cold, he was emotionally frozen by his family's betrayal. Kenso needed to send a secret message to one of his last loyal contacts, a woman in Tokyo. He had to send the message in a special, old code that only true family members knew. He wrote the message by hand, but he couldn't trust his last guard outside the door. He looked at Izzy. Take this message. Go into the small bathroom. Take the hidden phone from under the sink. Send this exactly as I wrote it. Then destroy the paper. It was a small test, but an enormous risk. If Izzy was the spy the rivals thought she was, this message would be the end of Kenso. Izzy didn't hesitate. She took the note, went to the bathroom, and followed his instructions perfectly. She came back, her face pale but calm. Kenso looked at her, his eyes searching her soul. He saw only honesty. You could have used that phone to tell Hanjin exactly where I am, Kenso said. You could have been free right now. I don't betray people who need help, Izzy simply replied, remembering the simple rule of her old life. I hate you making me stay here, but I won't kill you. Kenso walked over to her slowly, the movement heavy with realization. He took her hands, his touch surprisingly gentle. I have 200 men on my payroll, Kenso whispered, his voice thick with a sudden, overwhelming trust. I have guards who have known me since I was a child. I have blood relatives, sworn brothers. He tightened his grip on her hands. But they are all loyal to the power of the Lee clan. They are all greedy. They can all be bought by the man who sits on the throne. He looked into her eyes, the last bit of his cold armor breaking. You, Kenso confessed. You are the only person I trust. You have no reason to want the throne, no reason to want my money, and no reason to lie. You acted purely on kindness, and that is the only truth I have left in this world. The powerful mafia heir, the one who everyone bowed to, was completely reliant on the simple waitress who gave him her last $12. Suddenly, the security alarm in the room started screaming, loud, urgent, and terrifying. Red lights began to flash. Intruder! A computerized voice yelled. Section D breach. Kenso grabbed Izzy, pulling her behind a steel cabinet. His face was a mask of cold fury. Hanjin found us, Kenso hissed, pulling a handgun from his belt. He knows I'm still alive, and he sent the final cleanup crew. Izzy wasn't scared for herself anymore. She was scared for him. She was the only thing standing between Kenso and his murderous brother. The first safe house exploded only seconds after Kenso shoved Izzy out the emergency door. The sound was deafening, the blast shaking the entire city block. They ran, Kenso holding a clean towel tight against a bullet graze on his arm. Izzy wasn't thinking about fear anymore. She was thinking about survival. They made it to a smaller, secret hiding spot, a tiny, old basement room under a noodle shop. The air was thick with dust and the smell of danger. As Izzy carefully cleaned Kenso's wound, he watched her face. You saved me again, he whispered. You saw the wires in the wall, didn't you? Izzy nodded. She had noticed the small, loose wires right before the alarm went off. My father was an electrician, she explained simply. I learned to spot bad wiring. Kenso laughed, a dry, tired sound. A genius in disguise. He was helpless, relying completely on the waitress with the simple kindness and the electrician skills. The power of the mafia heir meant nothing in that dark room. But the biggest shock was still waiting for her. She had asked one of Kenso's guards to bring her one small box of things from her old apartment. In that box, tucked inside a worn Bible, she found it, an old, folded piece of paper. It was a letter from her late mother. The first line she read made her heart stop. It wasn't in English. It was a clear, confident greeting in Korean. The new hiding spot was terrible. It was dark, dusty, and cold. There were no surveillance screens, just one single lamp and a small table. Kenso's men had sealed the outside, leaving only Izzy and Kenso inside. Kenso was hurt, his left arm wrapped tightly. Izzy, surprisingly steady, cleaned and bandaged the wound like she had practiced first aid her whole life. She was calm in the chaos. Hanjin knew that alarm was a fake, Kenso muttered, wincing as she pulled the tape tight. He knew I would think it was a general attack. He waited until I was distracted, then sent his demolition team. He won't stop, Izzy stated simply. No, Kenso agreed. He can't let me live now that he knows I survived. In this tiny, dark room, their forced arrangement had turned into something real. Izzy wasn't just his prisoner anymore. She was his caretaker, his only link to safety. He was completely vulnerable with her. Izzy felt a sudden, deep ache for her old life. She asked one of the loyal guards, before they sealed the room, to retrieve one thing from her apartment. A showbox containing letters from her mother. It's just junk, Izzy told the guard. But I need it. Later, sitting under the dim lamp, she opened the box. It smelled like dust and her mother's favorite cheap perfume. She found a faded photograph, an old birthday card, and then, the heavy, folded letter inside the Bible. The paper was thick, expensive, and clearly not something her poor mother had bought. The handwriting was elegant. Izzy opened it. The first line was in perfect Korean script. Izzy didn't speak Korean, but she recognized the characters from seeing them on the documents Kenso reviewed. She skipped past the Korean to find the English part, scribbled below it. It was a note from her mother, written a few days before she died. The note was short, simple, and crushing. My darling Izzy, if you are reading this, I am gone. I was hoping to tell you this when you were older, but there is no time. Do not forget who you are. The family always finds its own. You are Isabella, child of the Moon Clan. Your father took us away to protect you from the wars, but the connection is in your blood. Remember the name I gave you when you were born. Do not use it, but never forget it. Yijin. Izzy stared at the paper. Yijin. A Korean name. Child of the Moon Clan. Her mother had never spoken a word of Korean, never mentioned a clan, and certainly never used that name. Izzy felt dizzy. The life she thought she knew, the life of poverty, struggle, and anonymity, was a carefully constructed lie. Her existence was never random. She hadn't accidentally stumbled into the Lee clan's world. She had been pulled back to the world she was born to avoid. Izzy looked up at Kenso, who was watching her with concern. The Moon Clan, Izzy whispered, her voice shaking. What is the Moon Clan? Kenso's face went completely blank. He immediately knew that name. The Moon Clan was a powerful, small family. They were the ancient allies of the Lee clan for 100 years. They specialized in intelligence and security. They disappeared completely 15 years ago. Izzy looked back at the paper. My mother says my father took us away to hide me from the wars. To keep me safe. Kenso stared at her hands, which were trembling as she held the letter. The Moon Clan's leader, the Patriarch, was assassinated in a blood feud right before they vanished. If your father was part of them, and your mother knew about the wars, then the kindness you showed me wasn't random, Izzy. He looked at her with a dawning awe. You are not just a waitress, Izzy. You are Yijin, the daughter of the Moon Clan, the only surviving bloodline of our greatest allies. You were tied to this world from the moment you were born. The realization hit her like a punch. Her mother didn't protect her from the mafia by moving them away. Her mother protected her by making her invisible. The simple letter blew the story wide open. Izzy hadn't just saved a man for $12. She, the last surviving member of an allied family, had saved the heir to the family her ancestors were sworn to protect. It wasn't debt, it was destiny. Kenso reached out slowly, taking the letter from her trembling hand. He read the simple English words, then looked at the confident Korean script at the top. Hanjin and his rivals are looking for a weakness, Kenso stated, his eyes suddenly burning with new resolve. They think you are a spy. But you are not a spy. You are an asset. A symbol. The return of the Lee clan's lost ally. He looked at her, no longer seeing a scared waitress, but a piece of the puzzle, a crucial link to his own family's history. You are not random, Yijin, Kenso whispered, using her secret Korean name for the first time. You were meant to find me. You are the key to exposing Hanjin and uniting the rest of the clan. We are bound together by a debt, yes, but now we are bound by blood and destiny. The danger was still outside, but inside the small room, their alliance changed entirely. Izzy was no longer a forced prisoner. She was a fated player in the war. Kenso Lee, now fully recovered and wearing a new, sharp black suit, stood with Izzy, Yijin, in a secret war room overlooking the city. He was preparing to walk back into the light and face his brother, Hanjin, and the clan elders. Izzy, no longer wearing a waitress uniform but simple, elegant clothes chosen by Kenso, felt the immense fear and excitement. She was no longer just his debt. She was his destiny, his shield, and his greatest weapon, the lost daughter of the Moon clan. Kenso looked at her, his eyes firm. This ends now, he said. Hanjin thinks he won. He thinks I'm dead, or at least weak. Kenso's plan was simple. Use the truth of the betrayal and Izzy's lineage to take back his leadership. But the fight wasn't just about power. It was about the dangerous, true feeling he had for her. Before he stepped out, his loyal contact in Tokyo sent a final, desperate message. The message wasn't about the fight. It was about the gossip. The elders are talking, the message read. They say the dragon's head is emotionally compromised because of a waitress he brought into the fold. They call her a weakness. Kenso read the text, his face remaining perfectly calm. Izzy gasped, realizing that their love had become the central problem. Kenso moved with the speed and precision of a predator who had been caged for too long. Using Izzy's mother's letter and the old codes of the Moon clan, he contacted the most ancient, most loyal sectors of the Lee clan, the elders who valued history over greed. He presented the evidence simply. The truth of the betrayal. Proof that his brother, Hanjin, tried to murder him to become the dragon's head. The proof of the lie. The codes and records proving Hanjin manipulated the clan's finances and communication to make Kenso seem dead. The destiny. He introduced Izzy, Yijin, as the last surviving daughter of the Moon clan, the ancient protectors. The elders were stunned. They couldn't ignore the proof of betrayal, but they also couldn't ignore the return of the fabled Moon clan. Kenso called a final, tense meeting. He walked into the clan's main meeting hall, Izzy walking beside him, head held high. Kenso didn't need to yell. The truth of his power filled the room. Hanjin tried to fight, but the loyal elders turned on him. Kenso began rising back to power, reclaiming his syndicate with the elegance and force of a true leader. Hanjin was arrested, stripped of his title, and exiled. The civil war was over, won not just by bullets, but by the simple, powerful truth Izzy had brought. But victory brought its own dangers. The Lee clan was a world built on strength, fear, and cold calculation. Love and kindness were weaknesses that invited rivals to strike. Izzy was now living in Kenso's enormous, beautiful penthouse apartment, no longer worrying about eviction or money. But she was constantly followed by guards. The danger hadn't disappeared, it had just changed its shape. The rumors started almost immediately. Kenso's men, his rivals, and even his loyalists began whispering about the powerful new boss. They say he sleeps with the waitress, one guard whispered to another, standing just out of earshot. They say she controls him. They say he is emotionally compromised because of a waitress, Izzy heard one of the elders say on a recorded line, his voice full of disgust. He is distracted by love. He is weak. The entire clan was waiting for Kenso to deny it, to push Izzy away, to prove he was still cold and ruthless enough to be the dragon's head. They wanted him to show that his love was just a temporary thing, a reward, not a real part of his leadership. The final, public test came during a massive meeting with all the regional leaders. Izzy was standing discreetly in the back of the room. The air was tense, everyone was waiting for the new dragon's head to establish his absolute power. One bold, older clan leader, a man named Mr. Park, stood up. "Dragon's head," Mr. Park announced, his voice echoing in the silent room. "To reassure the family, you must address the whispers. You must show that the weakness, the girl, is not a factor in your command. You must distance yourself." Everyone held their breath, waiting for Kenso to dismiss Izzy, to send her away, or to deny the feeling that had saved him. This was Kenso's moment to prove he was ruthless. Kenso stared at Mr. Park. Then, he looked past him, his eyes settling firmly on Izzy. He smiled, a wide, genuine smile that Izzy had never seen before. He did not look weak. He looked terrifyingly confident. "Mr. Park," Kenso said, his voice calm, ringing with total authority. "I refuse to deny it." The room went silent, a stunned silence of disbelief. "You call kindness a weakness," Kenso continued, his voice rising with conviction. "You call love a distraction." Hanjin thought the same thing. That lack of kindness, that coldness, is why he was blind to the truth. That lack of trust is why he is now exiled. He stepped down from the main platform and walked directly toward Izzy, who was frozen in place. He took her hand in front of every single leader in the syndicate. "This woman," Kenso declared, pulling her close, "is Yijin, the daughter of the Moon Clan, our most loyal ally. She is the only person in this world who looked at me, covered in dirt and freezing, and saw a human being worth saving. She is the only person who did not betray me. She is not my weakness. She is my only truth." Kenso looked at the room, his eyes daring anyone to challenge him. "She is the foundation of my new power. If you question my love for her, you question my loyalty to the clan. The rule has changed, the dragon's head is strongest when he is not alone." This was the final power play. By accepting the love, Kenso redefined power itself. He willingly placed a target on both of them, ensuring they would face every future threat together. 3 months later, Izzy and Kenso stood on the balcony of the penthouse, watching the sun rise over the city. Izzy no longer thought of herself as a waitress, but as Yijin, the partner of the dragon's head. She had found a purpose, a family, and a love that was stronger than any debt. Kenso wrapped his arms around her. "You are safe," he whispered. "You are protected." "We are protected," Izzy corrected him gently. "Together." They shared a quiet, simple moment of heartfelt reunion and emotional payoff. Izzy had not just saved him from the cold, she had saved him from the coldness of his own world. Life was good, but never quiet. The Lee clan was now stable, ruled by a man who valued kindness as much as power. One afternoon, Izzy was researching the history of the Moon Clan, learning about her ancestors. Kenso walked in, holding a small, sealed file. "The elders sent this," he said, handing her the file. "It's a new prophecy, a test for the new regime." Izzy opened the file. It contained a single, small photo of an ancient, tarnished coin. The coin's inscription spoke of a powerful, lost artifact hidden deep in the mountains of Korea, an artifact that could give the holder power over the world's communications. The message was clear, someone was already looking for it. Kenso smiled, taking her hand. "The war never ends, Yijin. It just changes its battlefield." Izzy smiled back, her fear replaced by a quiet excitement. "Good," she said, ready for the challenge. "Because this time, we're not running." That's the end of Izzy and Kenso's story. What an amazing journey from a $12 debt to an empire built on love. Let us know in the comments below, what do you think the power of that ancient, tarnished coin will do to the modern world?